I don't know if anybody's talking. I can't hear anybody.
I don't think anybody's been talking. I was wondering if I had sound check as well.
Oh, I can hear you all right. It looked to me like Ryan Applegate was saying something. So okay.
Can folks hear me? This is John Newman.
Yep.
All right.
No, this is Ryan. Hopefully you can hear me. I wasn't saying I was trying to get my video to work, and but that apparently is challenging for me today. But can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ryan. I don't even see a button where I can turn on my video on this Zoom call.
Hello.
Hello, John.
Hi. It sounded like we were doing a sound check. I just logged on. Sorry, I'm late. Are we, Lisa, are we ready to roll?
Yes, we are ready to go.
Great. I apologize for being late. I was trying to be in two places at once. Are you doing roll call through the roster?
Yep, I can go ahead and do roll call if you want to get started.
We can.
All right.
Let me pull up the agenda. So first item up is approval of the minutes.
All right. So should I do roll? You want me to do roll call now?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to get it off the attendee list, but yes.
Oh.
Sure.
Sorry. Okay. Bruce Bender. I see you waving his hand. We're good. Maria Chestnut.
Present.
Dwight Easton.
Yes, I'm here.
John Freer.
Yes.
And Peter Walker Kelleher said he was not going to be able to make the meeting, so I'll mark him absent. Hank Trotter.
Here.
Nick Kaufman.
Here.
And John Newman.
Here.
Did I cover everyone? Looks like it. Okay, excellent. Thank you, John.
All right. So now let's move on to approval of the minutes.
I move to approve.
From Bruce, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion. This is John Newman.
So any discussion, comments, additions, changes for the minutes? I see none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign? See none. Bruce, did you waive for oppose?
No.
Okay, sorry, I saw you wave. Next is public comment. Do we have any public with public comment? I see none.
There is one attendee in the waiting room. I don't know if
That might have been me. I accidentally came in as an attendee and had to re-enter. But
And Jeff Kroll, would you like him promoted to panelist, or is he just attending the meeting?
I guess if he has comments,
If he has comments, we can, and John, I made you a co-host, so you can watch for his hand and I can watch for his hand. If he has comments, he can write. Oh, now he's not there.
okay,
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
there you go. So let's move on to financials. And yes, Lee, thank you for getting those out. And I love the new legend. That was great. It's a new addition. So
Glad. Okay, trying to share screen here. So last time we met, we were still in the middle of our annual audit. So I wanted to let folks know that has been concluded. And so we do have audited ending fund balance for the fund at $2.7 million. Now, FY22 And when folks present today, they'll speak to some of these items. On first blush, it looks as though some of the columns might be going into the red. The managers of each of these projects are very familiar with this, and so we'll be managing via timing. But we just wanted to get all of the information in one place for this committee so you could see what each department is intending to do, and then also what at this point in time is projected for out years. And so that is the information that we have here in 23, 24, and 25, and 26. One thing to keep in mind, the revenue projections that we have in here are static for the out years. So we always manage this fund very closely to ensure that it's not going into the red. If it is going into the red, is it a timing issue that can be managed, or we're just talking about a small amount of time over a fiscal year cutoff and beginning? And John, thank you for mentioning the legend. That's something I'd like to point folks to, since so much is sort of in flux. There's so many moving targets with capital projects. We wanted to let folks know what's been approved and funded, what might be pending, a new request, and so forth. So I'm sure you'll have more detailed questions when folks present on their respective projects, but can I answer any questions around the financials?
So Lee, the deficits in both of those project out, both parks and transportation project out over the next few years, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so like you said, when we get into the projects, we'll help understand that.
One thing to keep in mind as well, I didn't note it on here, but parks and Setupkin are showing actual revenues to date, and the other columns are showing our projections. So we anticipate in FY22 coming in well above our revenue projections. We have another 6 months of the year to be collecting those. And we're already at about 1.4 million.
Oh, really? This year you're already at 1.4?
Correct.
Wow. So what would you project that out at, do you think, by the end of the year, if you're already there that fast?
Well, I'm very conservative, so I don't want to have anybody, sort of run with anything. And we can always pull these revenue numbers, by month to help managers manage their respective projects. But I wouldn't, I guess I'm in some sense declining to answer that. It's just such a, roll of the dice. But I'd say, probably at least another 250,000.
Yeah. Well, that's very safe, Lee.
But
That's my
Jer,
job.
I think Jer has a question, comment.
I just wanted to comment on this a little bit. The couple of things we're dealing with right now is we're seeing a lot of cost inflation in our projects. So our revenues might be conservative, but our costs also may be low here. So we know we're going to have to move some things with these transportation projects. They often take multiple years to put together and get to the ground, and so we're gonna see these projects continue to shift out into future years, and we're going to have to look at those future year budgets to get this to balance out a little bit better as we make adjustments for cost inflation. So those top 4 projects on this list, the majority of those costs are not going to happen in FY22. They're going to, for the most part, carry forward into FY23. And so that'll help us manage that deficit in this fiscal year. We won't actually run $1 million deficit. That money will shift forward. So that's how we're managing it. We have some flexibility in terms of when we let those projects and then when they're actually ready to go. So.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you, folks.
No other comments or, yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the work put into it over the past couple of years, and I think you've got it. It's nice. It's succinct, and also I appreciate the forecasting and not looking at deficit spending. So, and unfortunately, I think Jeremy's right. The costs are not going to come down anytime soon. So, so let's move on to, we've got next project reports. Fire.
We had a little bit of trouble with our IT again. Can you all hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up, please. All right. This is Gordon Hughes, the fire chief with the Missoula Fire Department. We had two projects that were IFAC funded or allocated. First being a cold storage facility, and that project is currently on hold just due to the cost of materials and the cost outpacing what was allocated for that project. So we're shelving that currently and looking at alternatives and maybe a better atmosphere to build, and hopefully the material costs will drop at some point. The other project that we had allocated for was the side-by-side that you approved. And we had a firehouse sub-grant that gave us $35,000 of free grant monies. And with that, the unit we had on order through Polaris, we had to jump on that unit. So we used grant funding to secure that unit, which was ordered with the IFAC monies that you guys have approved. So now they're back ordering the IFAC funded side-by-side. It is a supply chain issue right now, but they have guaranteed us that they're going to replace a like-for-like unit and have zero increase in costs relative to what we had expected and did that project out at originally. Any questions on that?
I don't see any. Thanks, Gordy. Public Works, Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me all right? All right, thank you. So what is on your agenda is North Fifth Street. That project for surface improvements used to be tied or was considered with the Turner Warden project, which currently has the transportation impact fees in it. So I think in your Public Works and Mobility project updates, I gave an update on both the Turner Warden and the North Fifth Street projects. I mentioned that those two had been split. I will share my screen. And can you all see a Google Earth image? I'm gonna kind of scroll in here, zoom in. So North Fifth Street improvements, we do have some surface improvements along North Fifth. That's going to go with a water main project on North Fifth and North Sixth. That project currently doesn't have impact fees in it for the surface improvements. So I won't necessarily go into too much detail on that, but then the project that does have transportation impact fees in it is this Warden Turner project, starting at North Fifth and ending over here at Scott Street. So we, where that one is at is, we've conducted a public meeting on December 9th, where we received citizen input into the initial design concepts and are currently under design in a preliminary design phase. And we are looking to get a cost estimate with a preliminary set of plans. And once we have that, once we determine if Streets Division might do some of the work along these collector routes, we will, further update committee and let you know how things are looking as far as funding and budget is concerned. That was the first project. Are there any questions?
Hey, Kevin, this is Nick. Does that project include adding sidewalks to Turner Street? Am I missing something on the air photo, or are they there?
No, I'm sorry. The project is a curb and sidewalk project. So where no curb or sidewalk exists, we plan on installing that infrastructure with this project.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one on the list is South Avenue improvements. I'll scroll to that project. So it is the project that is on the west or east side, Reserve Street on the west side, 36th. We've got to split that project up into phases. The first phase, we want to construct curb and pathway improvements in the area from Reserve Street to 27th. And basically what we want to do is here's 27th here, so reserve the 27th, and then continue pathway improvements essentially out to 31st. That would give a good pedestrian connection to Big Sky High School. So that's what we're working on right now. We're in the design phase, and we are at about a 60% level with that design, and we're looking to we're continuing to work with property owners and meet with them, talk about the project and what the project needs are as far as access and utilities and right of way goes. So it's moving along, and we certainly will look to continue the good work that we've already started in this coming year. But as Jeremy mentioned and Lee presented in the financials, we have $463,000 for FY22 on this project. That's all design work, but I don't think we're going to spend near that amount of money to work on the design phase this year. So there'll be some cost savings with that project right there. So questions on that one? Okay, I will move on to the next one, which is George Elmer Drive, Cattle Drive Roundabout. I will move to that location. So this is Mullen Road and George Elmer Drive. This is the 44 Ranch subdivision, Flint Ranch subdivision. This is McNett Flats that is currently being built, and then also Remington, and even Heron's Landing is in this area and being built too. But this improvement is here, and previously the budget was approved for design services to install a roundabout at to design a roundabout at this intersection per the subdivision conditions of 44 Ranch, Flynn Ranch, and McNett Flats. And so where we're at is we're on track with the design. We're at essentially a 95% design level, ready to finalize it. But we're in a situation where we don't have enough money to basically let the project, to put it out to bid. So that's, and it's an update at this point, but and we didn't bring a new funding request forward for this project at this time because we wanted to get your thoughts on it before we actually made a request. So we need your input, and I'll kind of go through some things in addition to what's already been presented in the project updates document that you all already received. But as I mentioned, current status, as I mentioned, costs have increased significantly. To complete the project as designed, it'll need a sizable infusion of money to construct. We're looking at probably another roughly $200,000. Due to inflation, the decommissioning, not entire removal, but decommissioning of a water feature that's located here, ADA upgrades and build project features that are driving up the costs. We've done a value engineering exercise to see what we could cut out of the design of this project to still make it whole. And essentially reduce the cost. So there wouldn't be a large ask for additional funding. But when we did that exercise, it was removing splitter islands on the legs of the intersection, the concrete splitter islands, I should say, and look to paint those instead. But that is really not recommended. And so we feel like there are some value engineering items that can be removed from the project that aren't also safety related. And so we really aren't going to be able to save a lot of costs for this project with savings in infrastructure construction. So what are the new conditions? The build project really changed some of the improvements around that were required for the subdivisions. And so we would need to amend or get development agreements in place with the build projects, such as Heron's Landing. We haven't got an agreement yet with Heron's Landing for constructed improvements. We have new bike and trail connections, RFB crossings, and lighting upgrades along George Elmer Drive as part of these build grant improvements that we still will be looking to fund. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the build traffic analysis. It's more comprehensive for the area, the entire area, instead of looking at individual TISs, traffic impact statements, or studies from individual subdivisions. So what the build traffic analysis stated was Cattle Drive intersection will work with stop controlled and additional turn lanes, much like has been approved for the main connection road into Heron's Landing. It's actually called Heron's Landing Drive. And this is, so we're treating Cattle Drive currently as Heron's Landing has been treated with the build grant. So, but then again, I wanted to mention if we did that, ideally we would want to reconstruct some of these corners. You see how wide these curb radii are, or how large these are. Ideally, those would be a lot tighter, so it wouldn't allow quick movements or fast movements when vehicles are making those turns. That would enhance pedestrian safety. We don't have to necessarily do that, but it might be a consideration that we want to think about, because first and foremost, our charge is to promote safety, and we want to do that in any of our infrastructure that we're looking to construct. So some pros and cons. I did mention some of these in the memo or the document that you've received. But the intent of the subdivision conditions for operation and pedestrian safety crossing George Elmer Drive to get to the park in 44 Ranch. So that was one of the reasons why the roundabout was conditioned with these area subdivisions, was to get pedestrians back and forth to the park that's in 44 Ranch. There are public and neighborhood expectations. There's conditions with subdivisions that are expected to be fulfilled. The water feature, we discussed with the residents that this wouldn't be entirely removed, but lowered to enhance the site visibility and to meet the site visibility triangles that are required for intersections. We also expectations are enhanced access for future traffic conditions, and then, as I mentioned before, safety for all users of the intersection now and in the future. Another pro and con discussion topic is what we currently have right now is developer contributions of about $150,000 for construction of this intersection. The city contribution right now, per the estimates, including a design, is about $240,000. And IFAC had already approved $43,000 in transportation impact fees for the design. The design is currently within budget, and so the new request could be approximately $200,000 then to utilize with the developer money of $150,000 to construct the improvements at this intersection. But I will add that lighting is not included in that estimate. Lighting would be an additional $92,000, we're also needing to figure out how to pay for that lighting. We are looking into SILD, or a special impact lighting district, or potentially road district, in order to fund the lighting that would be necessary for the improvements that we're looking to make. There's certainly, if we don't look at making construction improvements now, there's a risk of future inflation costs. Likely construction costs will increase in the future. And then wanted to mention some priorities. So CIP priorities. This project right now is not one of our highest priorities. It's not ranked very high within our large list of projects that we essentially have identified, and citizens have helped us identify projects that we should do around the city. And mainly that's due to the timing of the project and the needs for future traffic operations. So the roundabout isn't necessarily needed at this time for traffic operations, but the safety aspects would be enhanced immediately if we actually went to construction of this project. And then the other priorities are build priorities. We have other intersections within the build project, George Elmer Drive and Mullen, Chuck Wagon and Mullen are a couple. Chuck Wagon in Mullen. I'll zoom out here real quick. This is actually Chuck Wagon, not Roundup, but those other projects are looking to be either partially or funded in some way with transportation impact fees. And then there's other intersections like England and Mary Jane that will need roundabout improvements or traffic control improvements in the future that we believe are higher priorities. But they also don't include at this point include a developer contribution towards that improvement also. I wanted to also, maybe lastly, is before I open it up for discussion, we always want to look at what else can we do in order to satisfy the conditions of subdivision approval, or what else can we do besides potentially ask for more money and to install a roundabout at this location. So PED crossings, we could enhance those. We could do that here at the intersection with RRFBs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. In addition, McNutt Flats was required to put an RRFB at Pius Way with their development, and then the build grant between the future intersection of Heron's Landing Drive, located in this area, and then Bell Tower, which is existing, is a trail crossing George Elmer Drive that will have an RRFB there too. So when those two projects build that infrastructure, there'll be enhanced crossings there. So I wanted to mention that. And then as far as the operations go, it's currently a two-way stop control now. So that generally works with the traffic operations. The stop sign does rectify the site visibility issues that are currently on this leg of traffic with the water feature. So continuing that two-way stop control will work for a longer time frame moving into the future. And then I also wanted to mention that we've already lowered the speed limit on George Elmer Drive. So George Elmer Drive used to be 45 miles an hour. It's now posted at 30. So that adds some safety and adds operations too, for people not taking these turning movements at 45 miles an hour. And then just wanted to mention that we could also look to modify the curb lines, as I mentioned here, on these corners. But then if we did that, that would be another cost, and if another cost now, and if we did construct a roundabout in the future, we would essentially have to remove those newly constructed curb lines and replace those at the locations now. So that's what I have for this one, and I'd really like to, I think we'd all like to get your thoughts on this. I can also bring up a couple other items I wanted to just quickly mention. So here's the build grant. Traffic volumes in and around this intersection. South of it, projected volumes at 6,000, and then north of it, 7,000. And then I do have another file I wanted to show, which is as far as the operations of a roundabout is concerned. They put together this chart, and here's Cattle Drive here, the intersection. Here's the traffic at the intersection itself. I think this is actually a little bit higher, but it's 2050. So you can kind of see that we're under the potential threshold of a traffic signal or, single lane roundabout. So, as far as operations goes, a two-way stop control will work for quite a while out here, if not for the indefinite future. So, so those are the things I wanted to show you, and I'll open it up to comments and questions and concerns, and see where we want to move.
Hey, Kevin, this is Nick. Can you go back to your Google Earth image?
Yeah, I'll share again. Sorry.
Thank you for that presentation, Kevin. It's really, really thorough. But there's some things that I think that you and I know about that maybe the committee probably needs to know about. And so if you can take that drone a little higher so we can see Hellgate Elementary School. And so you mentioned in your presentation that getting kids across the street was important. And so we were initially looking at trying to get kids to school on a trail where you see Tipperary Way, which really isn't a Tipperary Way. That green field that your cursor is on is a conservation easement. That field is not going to be developed. And those owners have resisted a trail on the south side of their property. And so the last conversations I had with you guys was that trail might be going more in alignment with Pius Way to get over to the school. So that's kind of, I think, what's going to happen until they can work out a better negotiation with the McKennas who own that conservation easement. So if you go back to the intersection that you're talking about for the roundabout, if you go to the west, it dead ends against the park. Keep that drone up a little higher for me. Right. So at the west, it dead ends against the park, right? But you get a lot of local feeder streets. So that's the west side. On the east side, it's going to dead end against that conservation easement that we just looked at. Right. So more traffic coming on to this intersection from east or west is really, there's a low probability of that happening. And then Kevin showed you where George Elmer Drive, which is another connection to the west, is happening to Mullen Road. And then with the build grant, the connectivity between Broadway and Mullen Road will be greatly improved. So I think there's probably a place for a full roundabout, but I don't think this is the place for it. Now, Bruce, in your neighborhood where Grizzly Grocery and that roundabout is, that's right by a grade school, right? And so I've driven my bike through that a lot of times. It's kind of a breath holder. And when I use the roundabout, the beautiful thing about a roundabout is you don't go faster than 15 miles an hour. So, well, it looks like you're going to crash, you always avoid it. But they don't seem to be the most pedestrian friendly, especially that one in front of Grizzly Grocery. They've had to put up some traffic calming and notification signs to get those grade school kids from north to south. So if the form follows function, right? So it doesn't look like we have the traffic volumes now or into the future to justify a full-blown roundabout. If I was listening to what you're talking, your presentation earlier. And then if we're trying to get, if the purpose here, the function is to get kids safely across there, I don't think a full-blown roundabout is the way to do that. I think Kevin mentioned a lot of other ways that would be really appropriate and more bicycle and pedestrian friendly, especially for crossing that intersection. So you all know, we did 44 Ranch Estates, which is what we're looking here on the west side. We also did Heron's Landing, which is the south of this, and have worked on a number of projects and helped our company help get the build grants. So I don't want to overly influence it, but there's some things that I think are really important in terms of how this area is going to grow that leads me to think, and I thought in your presentation, Kevin, you were looking to not do a full-blown roundabout. If that's the case, I absolutely concur with your assessment here. I think the money can be spent in a lot of other ways, and I do think that we can address pedestrian and bicycle traffic safety at this intersection with a different form than a full-blown roundabout. Thank you for your time.
Kevin, I apologize if, Jeremy, you had your hand up. I just started talking here, but just a quick background question, Kevin, and if you covered this already, apologies for asking you to repeat yourself. But sounds like was a roundabout a subdivision condition of approval for 44 Ranch?
It was a subdivision condition of approval based on input from city staff at the time. And then that condition was then also forwarded to the Flint Ranch subdivision, which was adjacent and across the intersection. And then it was also furthered with McNett Flats development that is currently being constructed just north. So it originally was put in as what was happening out here was all this 44 Ranch traffic, essentially the entire subdivision. A lot of that traffic that was generated from the homes and lots within this development, and this was the first development to really occur out here, was going to use Cattle Drive to George Elmer and then a traffic signal here to really access Mullen Road and get into town. So majority of that traffic was heading to this intersection that was going to necessitate a need for a higher level of control than a stop controlled intersection. So that's why we originally recommended it as city staff, 15 plus years ago, maybe. And now with the build grant and other connections and whatnot, we just don't know that the traffic volumes will ever get to a level to where a roundabout is needed for operations. And I'll just kind of stop there.
So, and I guess just the question there is why it wasn't built.
Yeah, the question why it wasn't built is really is easy to answer. It's always been a difficult situation, but it's easy to answer. So this infrastructure went in with phase 1 of 44 Ranch to basically support the outline of the rest of the infrastructure at this location. What occurred is the developer placed this large water feature. I'll go to ground view to show you. I think maybe if you've been out in this area, you've seen this water feature. What this did was block site visibility for vehicles coming to the intersection on the west side of the road. So this water feature blocks the ability for vehicles to see pedestrians that are crossing. It blocks view shed of vehicles. So this can't really be with this site visibility hazard here. This intersection can't be used as a roundabout. And so as an interim measure, a stop sign was put here. And that's why the roundabout wasn't built, is because the roundabout would have had to have been shifted over. That wasn't in the plans for the Flint Ranch subdivision and was going to cost a whole lot more money, and the developers couldn't work out the cost, the funding scenario to fund this roundabout because of the increased costs and the location of where it needed to be based on this situation, this water feature situation. So
there was a subdivision condition of approval that said to install a roundabout. The developer put in a water feature that made putting a roundabout in impossible, and so there's no roundabout despite it being conditioned. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So how
Okay.
they got around the condition, but satisfied that condition was they put in money. So they set aside money in an improvements agreement and security that was going to go to fund this. And that's the developer money that I was talking about that we currently have approximately $150,000 to finish building this.
Okay.
But we need more money in addition to that to actually to do it because of the cost inflation and the rest of the improvements that are being necessitated by the build grant.
And so I think that answered one of the questions I had, Kevin. So that developer money was not conditioned to the roundabout. So it was just cash in lieu, and that doesn't go away if the roundabout doesn't get installed. That's so okay. And I think Jer had questions, comments next. And then Bruce.
Well, John kind of hit on my comment, but I mean, what we're dealing with here is a subdivision condition that was made in 2005. And then we have a lot of new information. And, you know, with the build project, we know a lot more about what we think the traffic volumes are going to be out there in the future and where we need higher level intersection control. And we're not treating any other similar intersection in the whole build area like this one. All these other kind of minor neighborhood collector feeders like Cattle Drive are just stop controlled intersections. And so it just feels a little bit out of place here to throw in a full blown roundabout. But it was a condition of subdivision. And then somewhere along the line, the city agreed to take on that responsibility, and we took improvement guarantees from several subdivisions, but the costs have gone up significantly. And so now we're on the hook for probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the cost of the project. And so I think it's worth having the discussion about whether this is our highest priority for using impact fee money. If we're going to have to put an additional $250,000 or $350,000 of money into this project, is this the one you want to do?
Yeah. Thanks, Jared. Bruce, you had some comments?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering if the roundabout's not warranted, can you go to a modified one? Can you go to more of a traffic circle one that it just seems like that you've already put in a four-way stop there. Is that correct? Four-way stop?
It's just a two-way stop.
Oh, okay. So George Elmer's not being stopped.
Right.
So don't you think you're going to have a problem in the future as George Elmer develops that high volume of traffic? It'll be really hard to get onto this from this area, outside pedestrians.
Well, what the build traffic analysis shows is that in the near term, it's going to work fine. In 20 years, it will probably start to break down. But we had traffic volume projections out to the year 2050, the build project, and it still shows the intersection operating at level of service E or something like that. It's gonna eventually get some congestion, but we're talking about the peak hour, and we're talking about 20 years out. So it's not something that's going to immediately be a problem or be any different than any other intersection along these corridors, along George Elmer or Mary Jane, where we have these residential collectors feeding in. And on all those other intersections, we made the decision to go with stop control now. And in some cases, the recommendation is to look at a roundabout in the future. But that's going to be many years out. And so it's a question of timing for me. And I think this intersection works fine as a two-way stop control for the near term.
What about pedestrian enhancements? Can you use these contributions to make that happen if you wanted to? Or
well, so the other thing that we have now is there's an RFB crossing to the south of this intersection, right just south of where the Flynn ditch is, and a second RFB crossing up at Pius Lane. So there's two pedestrian crossings with flashers on either side of this intersection. Go back to Nick's comment on the roundabout at Higgins. Sometimes roundabouts are more complicated for pedestrians to cross, and so those other crossings will do a good job of getting people back and forth without having to navigate a busier intersection. So that's new information. It's not a condition that we had when we originally conditioned the 44 Ranch subdivision.
So will that enable that crossing to get to the school? Is that what you're saying? You can actually walk down George Elmer and cross at a different location?
Yeah, so as Nick said, that the plan is to run the trail along Pius Way over to the school.
Okay,
And so one of those crossings is at Pius Way and another is down to the south of the Flynn Lowney. And then we'll run a trail connection along George Elmer to connect those two.
okay.
So that's the current thinking.
So it sounds like you guys are recommending to stop this project.
Well, I would say that staff is not all of one mind on this, but we're struggling with the costs.
Yeah,
And you see all the red on the financial sheet for impact fees, so it's hard to come back and ask for more money for this project.
I think
yeah. And then sorry, John, the other, or somebody was going to jump in. The other question I had was, could you use that new impact fee? I can't say the name of that's got a lot of money in it. If you're going to ask, what?
Suit up cane.
Whew. All right. Can't you use the money for that? If you want more money.
So the special impact fee for Tup Cane is limited to very specific projects. It has a list of projects that we can only use it for those things. This roundabout was not one of them, but those trail connections were part of it. So the crossings and the getting a trail along George Elmer up to Pius Way was part of the build project.
I'm trying to think, and I don't know, Kevin and Jerry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like they're really, in my mind, there's only two options. And the first option is build the project as designed, full-scale roundabout. And then the other, because that money is earmarked for that intersection, some other option, whether it's the value engineer option to enhance the safety there. Is that correct? Those are the two primary options?
Well, I think what Kevin said before is there's an opportunity cost here that we may lose some of the developer contribution if we don't do a roundabout. I think we would have the opportunity to go back to the developers and see if we could come up with an agreement on doing something other than a roundabout, but really what they're on the hook for right now is a roundabout. And if we don't build a roundabout, I'm not sure that we can enforce those.
Okay,
fees.
and I guess that was the question I had earlier. I wanted, so if we don't build the roundabout, that cash in lieu of the developer building the roundabout originally goes away, or a portion of that potentially goes away.
It may.
Okay. And so in the, I guess, is there a budget estimate? Has there been a couple of questions, I guess? Have there been any conversations with the developer on that? Is there a budget estimate if we did just what the pedestrian safety measures, the most effective pedestrian safety measures would be effectively for the next 20 plus years? And would I guess, has there been that conversation yet? Do we know if that money is going away and how much, and then what would be the recommendation for improvement?
We haven't had those conversations yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we were to put a enhanced crossing feature here, like a RFB, I think we're at least in the recent past, we had anticipated 25 to 30,000 for a treatment like that.
John, can I ask a question?
For sure. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I guess you mentioned that the funds that were currently the cash in lieu funds specifically tied to a roundabout that might go away if you don't build a roundabout. But do you have any sense of whether the developer would be amenable to? I mean, I got to imagine if the funds would go back to the developer if the roundabout's not built, then there may be some interest on the part of the developer to fund lesser improvements, knowing that they're going to get some money back. Do you have any sense of that? Does that question make any sense? I'm just thinking, like, if they're like, well, you know, you can either not get any money back and we build this roundabout, or you can get some money back and you allow us to use some of that cash in lieu funding to build these lesser improvements.
Yeah, I'll start with a supposition. And Nick may be a good person to help answer this question too. But I would say that it's likely both. I think with a couple of the developments, McNatt and 44 Ranch, there's likely to be, the developer is likely to help pay for a project with a reduced scope, or pay for it in its entirety, because that reduced scope project is quite a bit less, or less than the overall cost of what they were originally anticipating putting in for this roundabout improvement. The third developer, I don't think he's probably willing to put in any money for that reduced improvement. And so I'll start the conversation, or start with answering the question with that information, and let others continue.
Let's separate into two different issues. One is, how do we recover to a maximum extent the money that was put up as an improvement guarantee, not really cash in lieu, John, but as an improvement guarantee, with associated subsequent updated agreements with the city regarding that financial responsibility. Let's put that over here, put it at the top if you want, but then underneath it, let's talk about a roundabout, since we got Jeremy and Kevin here. So traffic control is what roundabouts are for. They're not traffic calming devices. It shouldn't be used as traffic calming devices. So if we put in a roundabout at George Elmer with an extreme amount of traffic going north-south and not very much going east-west, that roundabout's not going to function the way it's intended to, because you don't have a balance of traffic as you go through the intersection, right? I'm trying to figure out a good example, but I don't have one off the top of my head. We're blessed now with hindsight. Hindsight's always 100%. And we all know a lot more about this area and how traffic flows and how it's going to develop in the future. And we can make a decision, a qualified engineering decision. We'll let Jeremy and Kevin make the recommendations for that, because that's what they're trained for, right? But in my opinion, as a land use planner, regardless of whether I worked on this project or didn't work on it, I don't think that a full-blown roundabout installed here is warranted for traffic control. It might be warranted for traffic calming, but there's better, more efficient ways to do that. So I think the first thing we should talk about is whether we would concur with what seems to be a recommendation on the part of Jeremy and Kevin. And then we can talk about, what do we do with the obligation from the subdivision? So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was thinking as well. Certainly based on all the information and staff recommendation, I agree. I don't think moving forward with the project as originally thought as a full roundabout makes sense. So the next question is, what really is the most ideal scenario at that intersection, knowing what we know now and determining what that's going to cost. And then armed with that information, working with the developers to see how much of that improvement fund we would be working with, and then make a determination on that project moving forward. And I guess to me, that seems like it makes the most sense It hard to give money back, but we don't want to do something that's not the right solution just because we've got a little bit of money in our hands to do it. It doesn't seem like, and especially with the opportunity cost on projects that we can't do because of this, it doesn't seem like it's the best solution. So, Bruce, you have a
just following that, John. It doesn't warrant more impact fee. I guess that's what it sounds like. I mean, so if you can't build it within the budget, then it obviously needs to be modified. I guess I also feel that this project was brought forward by staff recommendation, and that because they thought the need was warranted, and so it seems like it isn't our responsibility at IFAC to make the determination of what to do, except to give more funds. And it seems like it is not warranted. There's not more. So then it's up to staff to determine what to do with this money. If you're not going to build a roundabout, then what are you going to do? And can you get the developers to agree with it? Since you've got allocated funds for it. But I don't see how this committee could support anything here.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm hitting at, Bruce, too. It seems like this just needs to be an amended request.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can determine, and it does. I think it does warrant going back to the drawing board on it. But I would agree for sure. Any other questions, comments? I can certainly see why it's not an easy solution, but does that, I guess, Kevin, does that make sense? And we'll probably work on this. We'll see this one coming back again in the future.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the direction. I think that's what staff had kind of expected or anticipated. Even though I'm of a mindset of let's satisfy the subdivision conditions. Let's utilize the developer money for to make that improvement. But really, if it's not, the improvement isn't necessarily needed as originally scoped, and there's an issue with which we frankly have is limited availability of funding because of other projects and other priority projects at that. Then certainly I can see not moving forward with this particular project. So yes, what I'll do is I'll kind of work out what the project may entail or may come to be, and if additional money besides the developer money that may be put into that revised project is needed, I'll bring it back to this committee and see what you think about it.
Great, thank you. And yeah, thanks for the staff and the thought that goes in on it. But I think we'll just look forward to seeing it and then move on to your next update if no one else has any more thoughts. Good, thank you, Kevin. Oh, you're still up. Keep going.
Okay, thank you. So Lower Miller Creek Road, we are working with our consultant towards final design. We are continuing to identify and address some items related to access, stormwater, and water that are occurring based on the timing of project improvements versus adjacent development improvements. And let me share my screen again and go to the area of that project. So Miller Creek Road, just so I can So the project is to construct curb and gutter, bike lanes, and sidewalk on one side, the south and east side of Lower Miller Creek Road here from Linda Vista Boulevard to basically Big Fork Jordan intersection and the new school, elementary school. Jeanette Rankin sits here, and there's a new development that is occurring in this area. So, so we're working with the timing of improvements of our project and the timing of improvements with the subdivision project. And so basically that's the status. Aren't anticipating asking for additional money at this time because we're in a design phase, not a construction phase. But we'll see what our estimates are and see what the potential funding source for this project right now is anticipated to be an SID for the construction. So so we'll just continue to work and determine what how best to go about funding this project, and if need be, we can bring it back in the future for a potential additional request for the construction phase. But right now we're set and we're moving forward, and it's going well. And then so sorry, questions on this one? Okay, Mullen Road widening. I'll go back to where we were when we were talking about the George Elmer Drive, Cattle Drive intersection, which is there, Mullen Road. So this project is this is Chuck Wagon Drive, as I mentioned earlier, and there's a shoe fly over to Roundup. The existing Roundup Drive connection with Mullen is currently in place, but the requirement is to make Chuck Wagon connect to Mullen and then get rid of this Roundup Drive connection to Mullen. So the improvement is a right turn decel lane. The limits are really from George Elmer Drive intersection, which is going to be a multi-lane roundabout with the build project, from the east here over to the west, where this three-lane roadway picks up at Shindig Drive. So the project is to make improvements at this intersection and then tie the three-lane from the west here to the east where Bill Grant is going to leave off. And so we just entered into a contract amendment with our consultant because we had a few changes in design conditions. One of those was extending the three-lane between the Bill Grant and this existing three-lane section. Doing that actually should lower the cost of the overall project, because we're not going to actually be constructing as much physical widening of Mullen Road that we had anticipated originally with the project. We talked MDT into, not talked them into, but we worked with MDT on making a determination that the existing road width here was wide enough for the three-lane section already. So they agreed with that point, and we'll get final design here fairly soon, and we're looking to go out to bid. As part of that final design, we'll get a revised cost estimate, and we'll determine at that point whether the impact fee money and the developer money that is included for this improvement will be enough to fully fund the project. And if not, we may come back and ask for you know, a little bit additional. But I don't think we'll be asking for nearly as much as we would have if we didn't change the project scope for this particular project. So I'll open it up for questions. Okay, and lastly, maybe for me and Jeremy can weigh in on this one too, is build grant. We've completed the final design. Plans are approved. We're looking to get the build contractor working as soon as weather permits. The city and county is expecting to receive the federal grant approval really any time now. And we've already, another quick update is we've already started some of that build work with the adjacent developments. McNabb Flats, as I mentioned before, needed to extend some water and sewer mains to serve their development. So that work is ongoing. Hellgate Meadows, which is here, is looking to extend Mary Jane Boulevard through their development. And so that work is ongoing. And then up in this area where Mary Jane is looking to be extended up to West Broadway, this is where the VA hospital sits, and they needed access from Broadway. So they constructed some interim build improvements from Broadway down to Veterans Way, which is accessing their building. So some construction has already started due to development. Due to the development pressure. We're looking to get the majority of the build grant infrastructure that we've committed to build. We're looking to start that here this year and try to get everything completed as quickly as possible. And some of that initial construction might bleed into next construction season, but a majority of it will be completed, is anticipated to be completed this year. And if Jeremy wants to add some information, feel free to jump in and be happy to try to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I don't really have anything to add. We did complete the acquisition of the Flynn Lowney ditch, which was sort of a sub project of the build grant project, and used some impact fee money for that. You all heard about that, I think, at the last meeting. So things are progressing well there, and we're anxious to get started on that project.
Any other questions, comments, or?
Yeah, John, this is Nick. I have one. So looking to the future here, if you're not all aware of it, you should be aware of CI 21. CI 21 is a proposal relative to the Montana State Constitution and taxation. And so Montana, as you know, relies on income tax and property tax. And the state runs off the income tax, and some of the property tax, and local government runs off the property tax. Aging population, people like to keep in their homes. Property tax is the most aggressive tax there is. It's not based on how much money you make or earn like an income tax is. It's just flat across the board. Unfortunately, for our folks in local government who are the gatekeepers for quality of life, if changes are made to the property tax structure, then they're going to have to find ways to make up for that. It's a simple fact. And so today, one of the things we're short of besides workforce is funds. And so as you start to look at the options that local government has for funding to replace, I don't know if the CI is going to go anywhere or not, but I think as an impact fee advisory committee, we need to be looking at, and we need to be looking at our impact fee structure and ordinance in the city of Missoula, which is pretty much based on static, what happened in our history and how we project that forward. That's not how the world works today. It's not how our state works. And it's not how our federal government works at all. And so I think that we as an impact advisory committee need to be thinking about the future. And while the city council may welcome our advice or not welcome our advice, thinking about impact fees and how they benefit our communities, who pays those impact fees, is also part of the equation. But things are changing. And I think that as an impact fee advisory committee, we need to be looking to the future. And I don't know what Dale or Jeremy think about that, but I think potentially changes are on the near, not so much the far horizon. And we want to make sure that our local governments are properly funded. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Nick. And we'll really have to stay tuned to see what does happen on that. But it's certainly a good point. And I don't know, today's the day to have that discussion, but it certainly is one that's on the horizon. Any other questions, comments? I think we've got, Ryan, do you have an update? And then we've got a couple new requests that we want to try to get to here. I don't think we can. Nope.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
And yes.
Hey, there's a little mute button on my new microphone that can get me when I'm just not waiting and listening and moving around. I can accidentally hit it. So sorry about that. I was starting with, I think on the agenda, I have Current Center for Recreation and Creativity and West Side Park. I can also speak to some of the projects that are on the fiscal year 22, well, all of the projects that are on the fiscal year 22 plan spending with regard to timing. To start with Community Center, the Current Center for Recreation and Creativity. We are just wrapping up the conceptual design project with NAC and MMW, and we'll be forwarding to City Council a working group recommendation to accept to adopt the conceptual design that we worked really hard over the last 6-7 months. We've also been working closely with a friends group who is starting a Confluence Foundation in support of the Current Center for Recreation and Creativity, and they have been making progress as well on that. So that's what's going on with the community center approval right now. Regarding West Side Park, we're looking forward for construction in fiscal year or in this upcoming construction season. And impact fees largely were used for phase 1 of the project, which created the preschool playground. But phase 2 is moving along and will be going into construction this year. Also wanted to mention, there's an approval for Northside Annex Park improvements. That's likely to be more in 23 as kind of the transportation project gets through and as we work towards the final plan designs. So that's likely to be pushed on. Another project that has movement in the hopefully construction in 22, fiscal year 22-23 is Redfern Park. Been working with the HOA for some additional funds to secure and get a new playground at Redfern Park, which we're really excited about. The Waterworks Hill project also is moving forward in this construction year, and impact fees were approved, along with there's BARSA funding, open space bond funding, utility funding, and that's a really exciting joint project that we're hoping to kick off in this construction season. Those are the main updates. I'm sorry that I didn't stop at the end of each one to ask for comments, but please, comments or questions on any or other.
I see none. Do you want to move on to your new request, Ryan?
Sure. So I think the first one is the sport court request. And I believe everyone received the impact fee funding application for that one. Is that correct? I didn't see it in the agenda package, but was that a part of something that people did receive on IFAC?
Yeah, I think that was sent out in the first email.
Original. I think so too. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. Sport courts. So I think really we have some. It started as a project, I guess, to ensure that we were keeping up with the maintenance of our sport courts, and we identified many courts that needed upgrade and replacement. And we received some funding for that through the budget process on this year. Once some funds were allocated, we started to do our design process at parks, and our design teams are working hard at that. We're thinking they're at about a 35% design level. We've had a lot of internal discussions at parks. We've noted 5 of those courts to really benefit from capacity increases. Those are McLeod, Franklin, Wapakea, Honeysuckle, and Skyview. And those capacity increases will come in the form of both square footage increase and in play value increase. We're considering pickleball lining. We're considering going from, whether it's a half court to a full court basketball, where we're also looking at introducing half court and potentially full court futsal, which is a soccer-like sport that can be played on hard court surfaces. And so that will really increase capacity in terms of play value and capacity in terms of square footage in parks that also have kind of a need for capacity increases as we went through the design. So the request in front of IFAC today is up to $202,000 based on about a 63% increase in users and a 50% increase in overall, a 52% increase in overall square footage in those 5 sport court parks, and a 63% increase in overall users. For those 5, our courts, our estimated project cost is around $405,000, and so we're requesting up to $202,000 to be used specifically at those parks. Comments or questions, certainly welcome.
I think Hank had a question, and then Bruce.
Oh, hey, Ryan. Yeah, I just was wondering, why the north side was left off increased capacity, because I don't think there's any courts on the north side. Well, there's one kind of dilapidated one in the north side park, but is there a plan for more play courts or something on the north side?
There is, and it is approved as repair through the budget process. The North Side Park and the North Side Annex are going through significant planning, and there is transportation sidewalk improvements going on right there. The North Side Park is an old tennis court that was converted into a basketball court when the life cycle of the tennis court got done. And so we're looking at removing some of that high fencing, making sure that the sidewalk corridor in conjunction with the transportation project flows through there. And actually probably reducing the size, but significantly improving the play value of that court. Because the basketball court, if you look at it right now, needs to be totally repaired, and it's on an old tennis court, so it's super long. And so we didn't put it on a capacity increase for this one because actually square footage might come down a little bit to support an actual basketball court and help with the pedestrian flow through that area, which is
Does
kind
the
of odd right now.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. Does the annex, Northside Annex, or is there going to be more courts there? Because one basketball court serving a large neighborhood, it doesn't seem adequate.
Yeah, the annex, as currently there is some impact fees on the annex portion that this IFAC approved for spending. And I know, there is work to make the diamond field a rectangular field out there and support, that's part of the master plan, that increased play value there. And to put a shelter in and improve and in conjunction with the garden space that's there. So there's improvements planned there based on a master planning process that went through. In terms of more than one basketball court, I have to get back. My understanding is there a full court basketball court would be there. And it is a neighborhood park, considered a neighborhood park at that level, but I'd have to confer a little bit more and get back to you on.
Okay. Well, I just have to keep the
design.
north side on the radar because there's a ton of housing going in, and the expansion of I forget the name of it, right up against the interstate, and then the affordable housing that they're trying to get going next to the Scott Street Park, and or the White Pine Sash Park. So, and I'm wondering, where is another park going to happen on the north side, and where are the play courts?
Hey, Ryan, this is Nick. Did you want to share maybe with Hank what the Parks Department is thinking about for the relocation of the park off the end of the Scott Street Bridge and the increase in size of that?
Yeah. So I think it's the White Pine Park relocation in conjunction with developments out there. And my understanding at the top of my head that some point in the near future, we'll relocate White Pine Park to the north a bit and have a larger park and develop a park there. So that would be another park to service that area. Although, I do think the level of service in the north side right now is below where we'd like to see it. And so both of the north side park improvements, north side annex improvements, and that park are in planning process.
I'll just have to say that's going to be hard for me to vote for this and approve this if the north side is recognized to be at a deficit. And with all of the building going on there and increased residents, that the immediate term doesn't show any increase in court play.
I would say part of the current project is to resurface that court for play value. And we didn't include it in capacity increase, although I guess in my feeling is that court is not an a playable point right now, and that will be addressed through this project.
Yeah, I think, Bruce, you had a comment?
Yeah, Ryan, refresh my memory in regards to the big bond we did, what, 10, 15 years ago. We mostly concentrated on community parks, if I recall right. So like the parks that you're listing right now, they probably didn't receive any of those improvements to those areas. Is that correct? Or
The Parks and Trails bond from 2014 did do, I believe, 10, and it focused on playgrounds.
Yeah.
And it did improvements at all playgrounds, not sport courts.
okay.
And some of those, I'm trying to think which ones, if any, are in conjunction, had the 2014 playground enhancements. And I'd have to get back to you on just off the top of my head, but
So we didn't do
those
any,
were all, I think it was.
we didn't do any court improvements with that bond.
That is my understanding, correct?
Yeah. I remember resurfacing the tennis courts over there on like Playfair and stuff like that.
This is Nick. Hey, just to clarify, that was a $43 million bond issue, Bruce. And that was followed by a $15 million open space bond issue. And then any new construction, unless it's in the downtown, as you know, pays impact fees. And then if it's a subdivision, which is associated with the owner occupied option for housing in the community, they do parkland dedication or cash in lieu and also pay parkland impact fees. And I think when we calculate impact fees, we oftentimes don't look at all the extraneous income that's associated and paid by the people who are causing our community to grow by buying homes or renting them.
I think
I'm ready to make a motion if we're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve this request.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That was John. So further discussion on the motion to approve. I guess I have a question. Don't see anyone yet. Ryan, there's in the narrative, there's a project cost of 405, but down in the additional information, there's an overall project cost of 675. I'm a little confused and also the percentage numbers are different. So I'm confused on which one is
Right.
which.
Okay. So when I first put this together, we looked at capacity increases on all 9 playgrounds. And in consultation with park staff, we thought it better to just look at the percentage increases on the specific 5 playgrounds that are incurring the capacity increase and only look at those project budgets. So 405 is the estimated project budget for those specific 5 playgrounds. And in the narrative, the getting to the 50% is based on the 52% increase in just those 5 playgrounds, plus a 60% increase of play value in just those 5 playgrounds. If I did not, I tried to ensure that I caught that in both places after having staff review. And if I did not, that is my fault, and I can fix that for the final.
Yeah, I think that was my only question on that. And I do, Hank, I think you bring up a good point, and I agree. It seems like that probably is something to be addressed more in the master planning. And I don't know if we have a vehicle within this funding request to affect that, but it is a good point, and thanks for bringing it up. So then let me just clarify again, Ryan. So then what's in the project description? Those are the correct numbers that you're using for the justification of funds? And then that what's in additional information needs to get taken out of there.
Correct. The additional information is the percentage of increase for the overall 9 playgrounds that, and it's likely that this project will mostly be bid as for all of the projects, but we wanted to specifically pull out the capacity related increases and only use impact fees on those specific 5 projects. So long-winded answer to say yes, correct.
Do we have any more discussion? Dwight?
Well, I'm on here. Yeah, maybe I need a little bit of assistance on our financials. I'm just kind of running a quick tally here, and I'm seeing that, based on commitments in 22 and into 23, there's an awful lot of red in parks. And as I just take our ending fund balance of roughly 465, add in our revenues projected at 279, and our next year's projected revenues at 225. Take those projects that we've already kind of committed to in 22 and 23, I come away with about 109,000 left over as a balance. Are we projecting that we continue to spend into the red? If we were to accept this at 2025, we're spending into the red by end of 23 just on commitments about $102,000, or excuse me, less than that. Excuse me.
For the parks category, and Lee, please go ahead. I'll take a stab at parks unless you want to answer the question, Lee.
I was just going to point out, Mr. Easton, that, revenues are a component that aren't known at the moment, and we are estimating very conservatively. So it is incumbent upon parks to work with finance to verify those revenues and the timing of their respective expenses as time goes by, in order to manage any particular, moving into the red at all. So it's a common conversation that happens. We balance the fund at the entire fund level, not per each category. But yes, it would be up to parks then to ensure that their projects, the project timing, expenditures, and revenues do in fact line up and don't take it further into the red.
That's a conversation the park planners, Donna and myself, have on a regular basis, determining the priorities and how we manage the funding sources appropriately, so we're not going into the red.
Yeah, and I think, Dwight, we have, it's probably prior to your tenure, the extensive discussions on that topic and where the committee's responsibility lies, and just because of that concern of spending money that we don't have. And I think really what the practice is, and I don't know that there really is anything official in that, but the practice is that staff manages that fund. We approve the requests in accordance with the ordinance if they fit the ordinance and it's the proper use of impact fees, but then it's up to staff to determine what gets spent. And it's internal policy that they're spending the money they have and they have collected, and choosing projects based on that to avoid that deficit spending. And I think Dale and Lee can probably correct me if that's not the case.
We're not hearing you, Lee.
Sorry about that. I would agree with that, John. Again, it's there's just a lot of moving targets, and each department is accountable for their budget and accountable to city council. So it's just sort of an ongoing calculation that occurs on a regular basis.
Yeah, because you have revenue streams that can vary. And Lee said you're being conservative. And then all of these guys have the problems of managing projects, the timing of those, when you actually expand. It's an ongoing issue. So I always view these as kind of their best guess to get it done. But will all those projects get done in 22? Probably not.
I guess it's just the concern is just over committing out into the future. We continue to see the red commit further and further out. So that would be my only concern.
And I don't think that has changed. I think really from the onset, Dwight, that's always been that. But the staff hasn't spent beyond that. And we did have pretty extensive discussions on whether it was this committee's desire to try to put forth some sort of recommendation to council about creating a policy around that. But, as Bruce mentioned, that there's always a need for flexibility. And I think transportation is always a good example, because there are times where there are projects that are approved that may not be planned to happen for a few more years, but there's other development or other construction that's happening along with it. And so it provides opportunities sometimes to maximize. There's quite a few examples of that, but I think it may be, if that's a concern of the committee, it's something to revisit in that. But currently, I think under practices, there's not a practice of deficit spending. It's just being able to have that flexibility in forecasting.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions or comments? So call for a vote. So all in favor of approval?
John, would you like
do
me to go through the list for everybody? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Bruce Bender.
Approve.
Maria Chestnut.
Approved.
Dwight Easton.
Approve.
John Freer.
Approve.
John Newman.
Approve.
Nick Kaufman.
Approve.
Hank Trotter.
Nay.
So that is 2, 4, 6. Of the 7 members in attendance, 6 yeses and 1 no.
Yeah,
And just put a footnote on that, please.
could I also too, Nick, before you?
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
I just want to say, I also agree with both Hank and John, that this need on the north side is growing. I mean, you think of all those units are going to go in there. So I agree that the concern is there.
In a similar vein, watching the growth and development, which is primarily in the Mullen Road area, both commercial and residential for a long time, and then watching where impact fee monies were being spent. As an example, Hillview Way, which basically at the time was experiencing no growth. I share Hank's concern about the equitability of where we collect our impact fees and where we spend those impact fees. Wholly in favor of the evidence room for the police because they represent us all. This was a difficult one for me, just like it was for Hank. But we all come from different backgrounds on this committee, and there's a reason for that. And our opinions count for something, right? So thank you.
And I say Hillview is a hell of an improvement project.
Thanks, Nick. Ryan, you have one more request?
I do, and just as a final up, I will take the recommendations from and all of the conversation back to our planners, and if there is a opportunity for capacity or would like more conversation around that north side, because we are focused on that as well as the whole city. So I really appreciate it. And specifically, we can reach out to Hank regarding that. And if there is determined or a need for it, could come back for request additional funds based on additional capacity increases that would be amenable to this committee.
Thanks, Ryan.
So next one, just let me keep up with myself, is a impact fee request for downtown Lions Park. I think this might be, if I could share my screen, would like to share the adopted master plan at downtown Lions Park. Seeing my screen right now, it's giving me some kind of, that maybe it didn't.
We're seeing it.
Okay, great, thanks. So downtown Lions Park is right adjacent on the north side of the Clark Brook River, adjacent to the California Street Bridge. It currently has little development. Basically, it's an irrigated lawn right now. We have gone through a master planning process with multiple stakeholders and also have been working with a lot of different groups, including Great Western Engineering and NADA, Native Americans Against Drug and Alcohol, the All Nations Health Center, to figure out ways to make improvements to this park. We would like to, master plan shows a area for a playground. That's your number 1 here. A shelter, number 3, lighting to get the Ron's River Trail lit appropriately, and number 4, some community garden spaces. That is the plan for phase 1. The master plan also goes further to bring Flynn Lowney Ditch area and activate this area closer to the river on both sides of the current irrigation channel. That is not what we're proposing impact fees to help fund at this time. It would be park improvements and potential lighting improvements through here. And really the park impact fees would be focused on the improvements within the park, which would be potential garden, playground, shelter, ADA access improvements. So that I believe is the request for that phase 1 development. It's looking like that project cost on phase 1 is going to be right around the $1 million range. Like I said, we are working to put together funding packages to get us to a project, and would like at this time to request $150,000 for impact fee eligibility. Questions or comments are gladly welcome.
Thanks, Ryan. I guess maybe in the spirit of time, we can discuss this, but is there a motion first?
I move to approve the funding request.
Thanks, John. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second it, Bruce.
Great, thank you. Discussion.
So I'm trying to understand, maybe I just kind of spaced it out, but the money is only going to be for design, or is it actually going to build improvements? Because you're saying
I think, yeah, on this particular, with the adopted master plan and fundraising currently happening to get to construction of phase 1, this would be to help fund construction elements of phase 1.
And won't that Flynn Lowney ditch be abandoned there in the future, or not?
I couldn't speak directly. It sounds familiar with me, but I'm not as familiar with the Flynn Lowney project. So Kevin or Jeremy may be more familiar, or I could ask Neil Miner, our planner, our grant, and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. That portion of the channel will be abandoned, and it is part, we do own the underlying property there. So
obviously that's going to change the whole plan there, right? Because you obviously don't want to leave that open, right?
I think there's a good opportunity to restore that ditch somehow. I'm not sure what we'd want to do, but could be incorporated into that more natural area.
Well, like, the pedestrian bridge is a little pricey little jewels, so that seems questionable why you'd even need it then. But that's a part of a future project, Ryan, is that correct?
Correct. The phase one, which this request is associated with, is park improvements only, shelter, playground, community, ADA access.
Yeah, it just seems like that whole structure there, that 9 and 10, 7, 9, and 10, all of that may change.
Yeah, that's where the headgate structure is. And so I think we'd have an opportunity to do something there. It may not need to be a bridge in the future, but we'll have to do something with the headgate eventually.
Okay.
So Ryan, this is Nick. I got a question for you. So I've enjoyed going down into those riverfront improvements by the brewery where we have that access to the park. I was a little disappointed that got closed, and then it got reopened, and so there were a couple windows of opportunity to use that. I fully support the activation of this area and the kind of the reclaiming of the community to be able to use this, but we got good long-term plans in place so that when this improvement is done, it will actually be available and to be used by the general public while we don't have answers for our unhoused.
I think that's a big question. I think this particular part of activating downtown Lions Park fits in with the North Riverside Parks and Trail Plan and the downtown master plan. And there's also planning processes in the West Broadway area right now to bring all of that together into a fully activated and place. So I see Dale has his hand up as well.
Yeah, just a quick answer to your question, Nick. Absolutely, we have plans to do this. The timing of opening West Broadway Island was unfortunate. Is that we did our grand opening in October, where we're kind of heading into the winter. Then the pandemic hit, and one of the big issues in management is that it's hard to incentivize the public for us to put programs on and incentivize these activities during the pandemic. So we're already thinking about, as we emerge from this, how we're going to be able to reactivate this area so we get the behaviors we want down there.
That's great. Thanks, Dale. I've ridden by this 100 times and didn't even realize it was a piece of public park. I thought it was grass associated with the improvements over there. So it's going to be a great improvement, and I think the public will feel welcome.
Yeah, it's the beginning of really enhancing this area.
I just want to, so I agree with all of what you're saying, and we kind of use that. That's our secret place to park when we go to baseball games downtown. So word's gonna get out, and I support all the development down there. Looking at this request, what I don't necessarily support is the methodology, where it's a new public facility, 100% eligible. And really, it just in the narrative, it contradicts that in defining the park itself as underdeveloped, dark, and has little infrastructure. So I'm not sure how we can say that this is 100%, that all of these improvements are 100%. I certainly think that based on the amount of the request and the overall cost, you could fit the methodology into another calculation, but I don't agree with the methodology.
I'll speak to, I guess, my reasoning for requesting it as 100% is that it is I guess I was looking at appendix to the application in figure 1, where parks and open space eligibilities include community regional parkland, amenities, trailheads, vehicles, and equipment. These are 100% new amenities in a park. They're not capacity increases to a park that of existing amenities. They're amenities that don't exist and we're putting them in. And that's kind of where I was thinking about the 100%. Just, and if there is a different methodology, yeah, that's just where I was at.
And I mean, I would agree with that if this request was written up just as the equipment, but it includes the entire project, including design and site work. And so it's again, it's not lack of support for the project. It's just the precedent of, I don't think it is 100% attributable or eligible for impact fees.
I guess the only thing I wonder about, John, is it's certainly going to be 100% improvement as far as its usage. Because right now it's just a grass area, right? So now you're going to put whatever you're putting there is going to be 100% improvement in its usage. No?
Yeah, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're up against the last minute here of the meeting. I think this is, for me, it's been a recurring theme. I don't think we can, just because we say it's 100% eligible doesn't make it eligible. I think we have to have something that actually does justify that. And if this were a request just for the equipment in the park, as you're saying, Ryan, then yes, I could see that being 100% eligible. But it's a request that includes quite a bit more than that. If the total request is for $150,000 and the total request is for $150,000 and we're looking at $1 million project, I think you can easily show that capacity increase would be well within it. And so it's not, it's the way that it's written up in the justification is what my pause is on it.
Can you do it in phases possibly? Get it designed, get better, or is it already designed, Ron?
It's my understanding that it is not already designed. But we are working to secure funding for the project and we'll move forward. So I think I could, separate out components and own, and would get to that 150, well above that $150,000 request, and bring it back for sure. So we could do that as we're further along. That I would think that would be a possibility for sure.
And I think that's what I would ask, unless somebody else wants to call for a vote. Can we table this motion?
I guess my only concern is, are we delaying something? Could we get the design going? Because that's all, or are you not going to work on this right away? Because when are we going to get together? We don't get together. We want to get together quarterly, right? We're going to delay at least 3 months if we do that, I guess.
There is a component of some availability of playground equipment. I would need to check a little bit more on timing to get a full answer back to the committee. I don't think I could answer that right now. I believe we have some time, but there is an opportunity element of it that's here too.
I agree with you, John. Maybe delay it. And then if you get something together sooner, Ryan, maybe we could just have a quickie meeting over this project. I just hate to see something get delayed, for 6 months because whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I agree too, Bruce. I just don't like setting a precedent of approving something.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's a hard fix. So maybe, do you think, Ryan, if you could do that, we could easily reconvene for one review?
Yeah, and as I understand it, is separate out specific amenities that are brand new, show the cost of those specific amenities, and ask and say these specific amenities would be 100% eligible as they're brand new. And then it would come up to a rather large number and ask for something smaller at this time.
Yeah, and
Does that
that's
sound right?
really based on that.
Okay.
Based on that appendix, if all of the equipment in the park is $500,000, I would see that as 100% eligible, and the request for $500,000 would be warranted. We don't have that in the Parks Fund, so we wouldn't spend it. But I would see that.
I would like
Yeah,
to hear.
I can do that. Sorry, Hank.
Oh, sorry. I would like to see some of your thoughts about how this is going to change behavior in that area, because this is a small isolated park with hardly anybody living around it. And I don't understand how a shelter and a garden are going to change anything that happens in that Clark Fork Island area.
I think my immediate thoughts go to the collaboration and the partners we have on board through this project. Missoula County City Health Department, NADA, All Nations Health Center, and I think potentially MRA as well, and really focus on that component and education and activation of that area. Those are my immediate thoughts. I think
Well, maybe
that
bring that to the next meeting when you have the revised motion. That would be helpful for me.
Right, sure.
I can kind of share Hank's thoughts. I mean, I think there'd be a lot of coordination between the Johnson unhoused project, Johnson Street unhoused project, and virtually the brand new Montana Rail Link Park, and the installation of the shelter and the picnic tables, and then to watch the picnic tables get removed and then replaced with round ones that are less easy to sleep on. I think we learn as we go along, but just nodding doesn't satisfy the concerns that both Hank and I have raised here.
You have a motion, John, so you're gonna have to move the table it or whatever you want to do, or
I would entertain a move to table.
I would move the table.
We have a second on that.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Dwight. Any discussion on tabling the motion? Lisa, do you want to do a quick roll on that?
I sure can. So John, you're moving to table it. Dwight, you seconded it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, excellent. So here's the vote on tabling the motion until the next meeting. Bruce Bender,
Aye.
Maria Chestnut,
Yes.
Dwight Easton,
Yes.
John Freer,
Yes.
John Newman,
Yes.
Nick Kaufman,
Yes.
and Hank Trotter.
Yes.
So that's unanimous for all in attendance.
Thanks, everybody. Any other business comments? We move on to setting the next meeting. I think probably maybe that'll be set based on if we get an updated request from Parks. Then Lisa can send out some notification of that.
Certainly, Ryan, if you can just include me on that information, that would be great. And then I can work on scheduling the next meeting if that's agreeable with everyone.
Sure. Will do. And I'll also ask about timing because I think I can get the application updated rather quickly. But if there isn't a significant timing impact, we may not have to pick it up till the next ordinary quarterly meeting. Does that make sense to all?
Yes. Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, everybody. And sorry we ran a little late today.
Thanks, Ryan. I always enjoy your presentations. Well thought out.
Tremendous amount of information and stuff that's going on, and it's good to see. So Thanks, everybody.
Steph. Thanks, Lee. Great job today.
Thank you all. Appreciate the discussion.
Take care, folks.
Thank you.